other thing that that studying your reader, Collier didn't even talk. I don't think I go into it in detail here on these slides. But everybody know what RFM is? RFM. You must know what RFM is. And in fact, when I went to AWAI, I asked the same question. 500 copywriters, like 2 people raised their hand. You must understand RFM. RFM is the base thing that you need to know as a direct marketer. It stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value. If you know that about your customers, I mean, AJ was talking earlier today about segmenting into your Facebook group. If you know how many people on that group, how recently they've corresponded with you, how recently they've clicked, how recently they've liked. I'm trying to put this in an online context because this was an offline concept. It applies online. Frequency, how often do they do it? In direct mail, it was what we called our multi-buyers. I mean, you know, somebody who buys from you that second or third time, Jeff, is like gold. Right. And that's got to be segmented out. They should be talked to differently. You got to talk to your customers differently. I mean, Ryan Levesque is doing wonderful work right now with his buckets and his ask funnel. You know, Ryan, I tell him all the time, you know, one of my buds, I mean, honored, I have a blurb for his book. He put me on the back cover. It was like, I said, Ryan, you're keeping me relevant. It's great. But the guy understands copy. He was a copywriter. He understands human behavior. He was like a neuroscience guy. And he understands list segmentation. Oh, imagine that. And you know, he always talks in launches of putting your people in buckets and then having at least, even if the messaging for your launch is the same, at least Todd Brown talks about this too, another wonderful online marketer. Todd Brown talks about putting a buffer on each of the videos in your launch. So you have the buffer for this audience based on, they don't know me very well. No recency, no frequency. No money, because they haven't paid me anything yet. The second bucket could be 3-time multi-buyers who've spent at least a certain amount of money. This is how we did direct mail in the olden days. And we did it all statistically. I was mailing millions and millions of names, and we did it all on computer because I had the transaction data on every single customer that I ever worked with, and I knew how recently they bought from me, how frequently they bought from me, and how much they spent from me. If you have those 3 pieces of data, just think about all the different messaging you would want to do just based on that. Forget about, throw in psychographics after that if you want, that you know you want to separate the men from the women, you want to separate the people who are white collar from blue collar, you want whatever. You want to do whatever you want to segment further. It all starts with RFM. And RFM, what we used to say, it's transaction data stupid. That's what we used to say in the old direct mail days. Because it's really based on how they behave on your list. So in direct mail, it was all buyers because we weren't really able to do a lot of inquiry type stuff. It was too expensive. I was paying postage. Online, you should have the same discipline. Know how these different segments of your list are performing and then talk to them based on that activity and behavior. And RFM is where you start. It was Esther, Rob, and then Ben.
Is there a formula or something to calculate this, like how many counts or how much they have to buy to?
No, I mean, there are. I mean, I did it in a black box with millions of names through a statistician. I think it's actually fairly straightforward. You can figure this out yourself. You can make a grid. I mean, I have a 7,000. I haven't. The answer is I should know the answer to your question, and I don't exactly. Because I don't think, because I did it, again, I did it with statisticians at a very high level. At a base level, though, I think you can figure this stuff out through surveying your audience. I think what Ryan is doing is going to be, I think his bucket product is going to really help a lot of online marketers do this. And you don't want to have like 16 segments either. I think he recommends 4. But at least if you had 4 different pieces of messaging to 4 different avatars within the same list, you've just, gone way beyond anything that you ever would have done otherwise.
I just wanted to ask the room, who has a segmented list? 1, 2, 3. So for the people that don't have a segmented list, what do you recommend to be able to implement the ask formula? Because I highly recommend the book.
Yeah.
It's good. But I've heard people that have a hard time implementing it because he's got like a system where your segmentation is codified to different segments with like a little abbreviated thing, like it's PFQ or RFD, and that means something to you. But, the majority of us don't have the segmentation. You're going to go home, human nature is going to kick in, you're not going to do it. But having the segmentation is so powerful. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I understand, all of the list programs, Infusionsoft, Aweber, you can tag.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar how to do it yourself, how do you get someone to read it?
You're asking, like I told you, I was a tech idiot. I have a tech guy that does it for me.
Yeah.
So
what kind of guy do you want to look for?
You got to have somebody, like I would go to I mean, there's companies out there like 6th Division, for example.
Ryan has this thing too, right?
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, Ryan could probably give you. I mean, I get into his NLM group, and then if you're not in his group on Facebook, he's got like 2,000 members. You could pop that question in there, and you'll get like hundreds of responses. There's a lot of people that can tag your list, but you still have to do the work on the front end. So I think you really do have to incorporate at least some version of Ryan's ask formula, which is really surveying your audience.
The simplest.
Surveys is the simplest.
Right now is what our friend Joe says. Buying doesn't satiate the hunger, it stimulates the hunger.
Yeah, that's recency.
That's where you get into this recency frequency thing. If somebody's just bought something from you, they're not satiated, they're stimulated, they're ready to buy again. So,
which is actually counter to a lot of people when I taught students, like college students, about direct marketing. It's counterintuitive when you think about it. It's like they're thinking, oh, you just bought, I got to give you a rest because you're not going to buy again. It's the exact opposite.
yeah.
That's why recency in direct mail was the single most powerful selection. We called it hotlines. So when you did a list of subscribers, the subscribers who bought in the last 3 months were actually a more expensive list. You had to pay a premium for them.
Yep.
That's why recency is a good point. And I think this is all available.
Yeah, I'm just asking for everyone because I know human nature. When something's complicated seeming, you'll just not do it. But having funnels without segmentation is not taking advantage.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, a suggestion?
Just things like active campaign. Like I don't do a lot of tech stuff, but CRMs are really huge in segmentation.
Yes.
Corporate. An active campaign gives you that level, but then if you think you're going to have a really massive list, then you can go on to Infusionsoft.
Yeah, Infusionsoft's got really good stuff on this. I think, I'm sure Maripost does. Aweber might not, might be a little too simplistic. But the thing that I would say on this is that then you got to use it for good and not evil, right? So then you've got to start figuring out, going back to the copy to list, what do you want to say to these different avatars as you develop them? Again, find out what language they're talking, find out. So this is where surveying is there's nothing better, and especially if you've done the relationship building and they're willing to, maybe you want to email a group of people that are your most active, this is why I would do this, I've done this, my most active participants who interact with me from my list, and I ask them, I need your help. What would you want from me if I was going to develop a product? What would, whatever. You can, this is like all available, and people who love you will tell you what they want from you.
Yeah.
If you've done the relationship building properly.
At a minimum, I recommend everyone reads the Ask Book. It's super easy,
Yeah.
it's short, it's a cool story, and Ryan's studied these guys that Brian's talking about, so you
Totally.
a nice little hint of everything.
The first half of the book is Ryan's personal story. The second half is the Ask formula. And he does a lot of teaching online, and he's definitely one of the people to follow. I mean, Russell Brunson, I think, is related to this. He's, anybody who I follow, my online heroes. I mean, Jeff Walker has a blurb in my book about it's all direct marketing.
Well, the very best good is always a little bit bad.
Yeah, you can always use it for evil, of course.
No, but always, it's got to be a little bit provocative too, right? It can't all just be like, this is what I want. You got to be able to show them what they want, right?
Yeah, exactly. Here, Jeff Walker wrote, when I started my first online business back in 1996, I quickly realized it was a direct marketing business, and that one distinction has made all the difference. But there was virtually no one teaching online marketing back then, so I went back to old school direct marketing to learn the craft, including the 6 legends featured in this book. And then he says some nice things about me, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, Dan Carey has a great quote. When he does a seminar, he says, what business are you in? And if they don't answer marketing, then he says they're wrong. I'm a dentist or I'm a whatever.
Exactly.
But just on the RFM thing, look, this thing is so far-reaching. It's like you can see it from one dimension, but if you look at it as an example, Kevin Halbert had a product he was working on, and a bit of background, Gary Halbert, he normally only gave one of 20 basic, when he's consulting a client, he one of 20 solutions. And Kevin, his son, was working on a product and he asked his dad for advice on this product that he wanted to promote. And Gary asked, what's the reorder rate on this product? And he said 97%. And this was the very first time he recommended that he give away the first time for free. And without knowing these numbers, like RFM, just to create an irresistible offer, that he ended up making millions of dollars from that product, from that one promotion alone.
Right.
Without knowing these numbers, you wouldn't get to that point.
Exactly. I'll tell you, I used to sit, Boardroom, the company I ran, at our height, we were, I think, 160 million. We were between 80 and 100 million for a good chunk of the time I worked there, once we built the company up. And I remember sitting with the financials for the company with Marty, who was the founder. We'd sit there and we'd look at where all the money was coming from. And we had a little newsletter called Bottom Line Personal, $39 a year, great newsletter. And we started looking at the numbers and we were losing money on every new subscriber we got in year one. But I knew what the renewal rate was, just like Ben was just talking about. I knew the reorder rate. In this case, in a $39 subscription business, by the time they got to year two, we were getting like 56% renewal rate. And then we looked at the money on that. I don't have to re-promote those people. They already know me, right? So I looked at those numbers and Marty looked at me one day and he goes, Brian, guess what business we're in? And we're in the business of bottom line personal renewals. And meanwhile, acquisition and traffic is the glamour business, right? That's what we all fall in love with. That's what I'm gonna give the killer offer, I'm gonna do, all important. But you wanna bring in the right people to make sure that they're gonna stay with you. And if they stay with you, now you've got frequency in the RFM formula. And you've got monetary, because the second order, I just went from a $40 to an $80 customer. And that's why we were in the business of bottom line renewals. I love this quote. The consumer isn't a moron, she is your wife. And the thing I want to just mention here, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but I am going to talk about just this idea, and it came up earlier this morning, I think with Mike, right? Mike was talking, about being congruent. I don't know if you used that word, but you definitely were talking about congruent marketing. What would they accept? What are they going to not only accept from me, but what do they expect from me? Like I don't want to be something I'm not. They don't want me to be something I'm not. And so when I think about this quote, I also I think about that. I think about being congruent in your messaging. I always tell the horror story about the guy who had a list that he was giving like a daily inspirational tip of the day. It was a very personal development kind of list. And he was doing some affiliates, that you would expect, yoga, meditation. And then one day he does an affiliate deal, because it was a lot of money, for a real estate offer. And guess what? Like 35% unsubscribes. So that's an extreme example that I've told in one of my blog posts, but it's something that's congruent marketing. The other piece of this is this whole ninja samurai thing. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but I've talked about this. Everybody talks about ninja. Just so you know, the definition of a ninja is like a mercenary, a murderer, like under the radar. And like, I hate the term. I know it's Ryan Dice invented it, and I have a lot of respect for him. But the idea of a tripwire, why do we want to talk about like our best customers are going to go over a tripwire and blow up? Their lifetime value is going to go down.
John Lee Dumas calls it a welcome mat.
Welcome mat. Well, Ryan Lee invented that term.
Oh, okay.
And I was going to give him credit for that. So that's what, if we start talking about, and that's why I use samurai instead of ninja. Samurais were the honorable warriors. And you know what? The words we use are important. They're not only, what's that?
Killer copy.
Killer copy? Killer's not bad. Killer's not bad. I like badass. There are certain words that I'm okay with. But the idea of whenever you talk about your customers and the people that you want to serve in that's why I don't like the term, whales, or the herd. Dan Kennedy uses the herd. I don't want my customers to be a herd. Yeah. But they are, but that's not what they are to me.
How about a welcome hug?
Welcome hug is good. I like that. In fact, I got people on my list. A couple of times I would on my blog, I go, those of you on this list, or my online community or whatever. And people actually wrote to me. They said, Brian, these are like people who are copywriters too. They go, Brian, that's not really congruent with who you are. Because you talk about us as like your online family. So now whenever I write, I'm using the words that they gave me. If you watch my blogs, I use the term now, if you go to my old blogs, you'll see if you're on this list. Now it's all about my online family. Little thing, maybe doesn't mean that much in the short term, but now my headspace is in that. And I think you put your headspace in Tripwires and Ninja, how am I going to deceive the customer to get them to buy? Maybe you're not. Oh, I have a great offer. I'm a wonderful person. I know, I get that. But you let that shit slip in, it could change the way you market, I think. Again, I'm off the soapbox now.
Yeah, I think Jay Abraham says that you should be an advocate for the belief.
Yeah.
That approaching your clients or your target market as the advocate for the custodian of your target market.
Totally.
It's terribly important.
Yeah. That's why you follow people like Jay Abraham, right? We cannot go after thousands. This is from Claude Hopkins. We cannot go after thousands of men until we learn how to win one. Just love that quote. Love that quote. And this is about playing the long game. This is about lifetime value. That was the other concept, which you all seem to know what that was. But I already given a bunch of examples of that. When I said we were in the business of bottom line renewals, Marty and I figured it was we're in for the long game. And in my afterword about Gene Schwartz, again, a copywriter, I said Gene was always in it for the long game. I tell a story in there about how he traded his copy for a list. It's in my, you can get to it on my site. I think it's a blog post it's not always about the money. And then I repeated it when I had a blog post called Gene Schwartz is my homeboy. But basically what he did was like he could have commanded $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a package. And instead, because he was playing the long game, when he worked with me at Boardroom and he worked with Rodale Press, which was a huge mailer at the time, he would say, look, I'll write you a package for your new book, Brian, but you're going to I need your names, because I have he had his own book company, right? And I would give him 750,000 names from my list for direct mail in exchange for a package. And if you calculated those 750,000 names at a 2% response rate across 4 or 5 or 6 products that Gene did, he made a lot more than $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000. And that's a copywriter playing the long game because of his business.